Hello, welcome to Standard 9, where we're talking about fraud and identity theft in our personal financial literacy standards. As I'm sure you're aware, fraud and identity theft is a rapidly growing problem. A recent study that we've seen has found that about 1 in 20 people nationwide were affected by identity fraud in 2019. Losses rose to a total of $16.9 billion, up 13% from 2018. Another study that we saw showed that the number of digital fraud attempts in the US is up 25% in the first 4 months of 2021 compared to the last 4 months of 2020. It's a big problem. This is another standard that has vastly changed in just the last 10 years, with more access to electronics, resources that are available on mobile devices. Fraud and identity theft will no doubt continue to grow. So I'm so glad we have this standard dedicated to this very topic so that we can help set our students up for success. The scams keep changing, and that can seem overwhelming, but if we teach our students a basic of what to look out for and to be diligent in protecting their information, we can help them protect their finances. One issue that can come up when teaching this standard, or others when students are checking their credit, is that they find they are a victim of identity theft, and it can sometimes be from someone that they know, such as a parent. So we hear that a lot, and we get calls about that and how to navigate that. Right in the standards or the lessons provided by the State Department of Education, it will help guide your students in navigating this. And if you need extra help or guidance, please reach out to us and we'll be glad to help you navigate that situation. So with that, let's go ahead and hop on over to the state curriculum and walk through that a little bit. So our first lesson is lesson 9.1 called Beware Consumer Fraud. So in this lesson, we're really identifying different kinds of consumer fraud. We're recognizing how to prevent being victimized from consumer fraud, and also determining what steps to take if victimized by consumer fraud. So really going down all of those very high level topics for students. So it starts out with an introduction, a scenario, as all the lessons do, where has a young person named Liam, and his mom is at the front door to meet him when he comes home from school. And his credit card bill has come in the mail, and she is mad. He promised not to make any frivolous or unnecessary charges on his card. It was for gasoline and emergencies only, not for fun and games. But there's been video games, all sorts of other things on there. Why would he do that? Should she take his card away because it seems obvious he is not trustworthy? So it starts out with that scenario, again, as all of our lessons do, just kind of opening up with an introduction story. Once you go through the lesson, at the very end, it shows that he was a victim of identity theft, and somebody got his credit card information and was was charging things on his credit card. So it starts off with that scenario. Then it goes into the lesson, and it goes through lots of different kinds of fraud. And, we hear different scams and stories and different things that are happening, but they really all have the same common denominator. They're all after money, almost always. That's the main point of it. And it's to get information. And so even though it can seem overwhelming that there's so much going on and different things happening all the time, if we just stay and stick with the basics, then we know what to look for and what to be aware of. And to know that sometimes emotions play a role in that. When maybe something sounds really exciting, but if it sounds too good to be true, there's probably something not right with it. We hear that saying a lot. I'm sure you say that to your students a lot. So it goes through the different kinds of scams, things to look for. And they all kind of boil down to, really, this list doesn't change. Just the types, or exactly how it's being done, is what changes. So it goes, as we talk about all those different kinds of consumer fraud, it goes into more vocabulary words in there, and then looking at is fraud a crime? And of course, yes, it is, and how to look at that. So even though some people may be getting rich off of fraud, they're gonna get caught at some point. Something is gonna happen. Then it also goes through steps to take if you find out that you're victimized. And so, if, especially, there's a lot of students that find out once they're digging into, they're maybe looking up their credit report or other sort of information and find out that their credit has been stolen, their identity has been stolen. And so, those are steps to take. And that's something that you can help students walk through if they find out they've been a victim of identity theft. So then it goes through the conclusion, and there's a final note where what Liam's mom needs to do is to ask him about the charges because they may be fraudulent, and to look at that and to ask more questions. It has a short assessment that you can provide to students to gauge that learning, and then a vocabulary scramble that can just help with all those different vocabulary words that are in this lesson in identity theft and fraud. So I'm going to now go to the second lesson, lesson 9.2, which is Beware Identity Theft. And so in this lesson, we're looking at describing the crime of identity theft, explaining how to prevent being victimized by identity theft, and then also to determine what steps to take if victimized by identity theft. So it goes a little bit deeper into that than it did in the previous lesson. So we go through this. Imagine getting a letter from the IRS demanding that you owe thousands in back taxes. So what's going on? Do you really owe that? Maybe you've been a victim of identity theft, and it's something to look out for and to question. So it goes through that, talks about how much, how prevalent it is. And this is an ever-changing number. I mean, I already know that these numbers, they continue to rise every month. So these numbers right here are probably already increased with the amount of fraud and identity theft and the impact to citizens in a dollar amount. So that could be something that you look up and see, okay, how much has it changed? Where is it today? What is different than just a year ago? Especially as we've gotten through the pandemic, there's been even more fraud and identity theft with all sorts of more opportunities to do that. So then it goes into how do they do it? How do identity thieves steal information? What are the tactics that they use? So it goes through different ways to look at that, and so that students can be aware of how to protect their information. And then it also talks about that it can be months before you find out. And that's what makes it even more important to go back to, like, for example, standard 4, managing a bank account and making sure that you're checking your information frequently so that you're not so far into it if you discover that something has happened. So then the next section is how to protect yourself from identity theft, and goes through different steps that you can do to prevent that from happening. So, and then more information about steps to take if you are victimized and who to contact, more information leading into that. So again, it's a significant problem, and something that it's so important that we talk to our students about and that they know the complexities of it, but then also how simple it is, that just protecting your information, being aware. And that the other thing is, it's most likely going to happen at some point in everyone's life. It's so prevalent, and to be ready for it and prepared. It's not if, more of when it's going to happen. So then it goes into an assessment for that. What is identity theft? Explain 3 methods that scammers could use, and then a matching activity to identify different terms in identity theft. So that breaks up the lesson in identity theft. Lesson 9.2. Again, you can find this on the Oklahoma State Department of Education website, where you'll find the student lessons and then a teacher guide to accompany those student lessons and how to lead that discussion in the classroom. And then also for the teacher, some presentations that flow along with the student guides so that you can show those in class or on a virtual platform. Okay, so some resources that I wanted to show you. InvestEd is a great resource here in Oklahoma that has lots of resources for our personal financial literacy teachers, and most especially in the areas around investing, and then also to protect those investments in this case. So they have a great area case studies on fraud, and so these are local stories. And that can also be a way to help students bring it home. Sometimes it seems like, well, I don't even have any money to protect. Why do I need to do this? But if we can show them that it's right here at home, it's happening all around us, happening to people here, it can help maybe provide some connection to it. So these are case studies, videos that they could watch. You could assign them ahead of time, watch them in class, lots of different ways that you could use these in the classroom. Another way to connect it for students, this is an article that is came out last year, and there's lots of really around this, but 8 celebrities who have been catfished online. And so this could be another activity that you present to them, where people that they're familiar with have been catfished. And a lot of these, it's pretty, it's somebody that's maybe saying, oh, my daughter is really sick and we, need lots of help. And so they are really good at telling these stories, and so people feel like giving. And even if it's $10 or $15, where is that money really going? Do you know who that person is? And that's what several of these stories are about. And then that's also a tie-in to Standard 14 and charitable giving. That specific example is this a legitimate source to help somebody? To really look at those, to weigh those scenarios out and really ask questions and look into it before you're providing anybody money. I think that's a really good point. Of all of our standards in personal finance, they really all overlap, and you're frequently, when you're presenting one standard, it's going to have lots of tie-ins to several other standards in personal financial literacy. So that's a great article to connect students with, to help them connect with fraud and identity theft a little bit more. So I hope that this information has been helpful to you. Please let us know if there's anything that we can help you out with in teaching this standard. We're here to help and to serve you. And yes, good luck with teaching this standard.